Well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to Paws and Purpose, the SPCA of Texas podcast. I'm Paul Heiso.
I'm Mara Davies.
And I'm KJ Eugene.
And we're so glad to have one of the most exciting special guests we've ever had on the podcast, as well as Judith Dumont. Judith, you are the Vice President of... Tell us again. Tell us what your title is again. People and Culture. Vice President, People and Culture. I've got it now, I promise. We're so happy to have you on the podcast today. We've got a bunch of things we want to talk about. How are you? Thanks for coming on. Thanks for taking the time to come on. We know you're busy. So lots of stuff happening.
Never too busy to hang out with my favorite people. I shouldn't say that, though, if I'm over HR.
Well, everyone's your favorite, though.
It's
Absolutely,
true. I mean,
yeah.
I have equal favoritism.
Mm-hmm. That's how I come to work and work with my favorite people all day long. Everybody. It's awesome. Well, we'll just get into it.
Sure.
So, like I said, we're so happy to have you, and we know that you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to everything HR, and especially now with animals, too. You're an expert on animals as well. You're getting to be there. So that's fantastic. But, I think everybody that knows you and sees you around the halls and has interactions with you, you're such a energetic, lively, fun person. What were you like as a kid? Did you have lots of friends, lots of things going on in your life? I mean, tell us about that a little bit.
I was a pretty rowdy kid. Ornery? Is that how you say it? I was called ornery. And I was pretty social, absolutely. So I'm one of 4 kids. I'm the third of fourth in the birth order. And a funny story or funny analogy is that my mom was pretty religious as we were growing up. And like those precious moments, angel figurines?
Little,
totally.
Yeah. Very often growing up, like out of the cluster of angels that would all be like gathered around a cloud, there would always be one with like a broken halo.
Aww.
And I was often told, "Look, Judith, it's you." Like my parents. So I was typecast pretty young as sort of like the rambunctious, playful, very curious. I was never cruel or mean, like nothing like that. Like I would get into healthy trouble, but I wouldn't say I got into like real terrible trouble. You know what I mean? I was much like now. I still kind of like to be playful and challenge systems, maybe, and have a good time. I love to laugh, and I think I've grown up with a lot of humor, and that's just sort of how I got through my day and my childhood. So
lots of friends. I bet you had tons of friends.
I did, but I have a sister a year older and a sister a year younger, so we kind of moved as a pack quite a bit. And while I had a lot of friends at school and a lot of friends at church and a lot of friends in sports and all the activities we did, I will say that I don't think that I had as many as you think. I have a lot of like superficial or like my network, but really close, deep friendships is something I've always been very careful about. So I don't know why that is, but maybe I grew up a little bit different. So we were careful about who we brought into our home, and maybe that's why. But I would say on the surface it looked that way. But I have always been particular about who's in my inner circle.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it's like trust has to be earned.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that makes sense with anybody. Yeah.
I think I was a fun kid, though.
Yeah, I bet you were.
I bet you were.
Oh my gosh, 40, yeah.
You're a fun adult.
I got called son a lot.
Son.
Yeah, because I was like a super tomboy.
Oh,
yeah,
right.
Like I guess much like now, I didn't like to fix or brush my hair. So my sisters always had this long, luxurious, like beautiful chestnut brown hair, and I was like, had the Dorothy Hamill bowl cut. That was
really common when we were
barely
little.
washed.
Yeah, right. And there's that age that girls, they could kind of, it could pass for either way. You can go with either way. You don't know, but
yeah, the 12 though, I was like, you got to get your stuff together.
Things change.
If you're going to succeed as a woman.
See, my dad had to take me aside and say, perhaps you should wear something other than shorts and T-shirts.
Yes. Correct. Same. Yeah.
It's like, okay, Dad.
That's interesting about your early years, but now up to this point, you've had so many years of servant-based leadership. I would say, is it more than 15 is what I read?
Yes, I would say I've worked on platforms that end with .org or .edu since I was about 24 years old, and I'm 47 and a half.
Wow.
So 23 years? Wow.
That's awesome.
Can you tell us how you got here? Like, what was the thing that sparked this to say, I want to be HR and rep
to get
that?
on Team Purple, my journey here. So I have a bachelor's degree in philosophy and gender studies. And the whole time I was in college, I was on my own from 17 years old. So I put myself through school and was in the restaurant industry. Waited tables, bartended, which is great for people skills as well. And a good hustle if you're putting yourself through school. So I did that. And as I was in school, it became a very safe place for me. And I had a lot of professors that changed my life. And my mom was a math teacher growing up. So teaching was something that I knew I wanted to do. And so I became a college professor after grad school and loved working in education, beautiful stuff. Got into leadership at a community college here at Dallas College locally, became a dean over the workforce education and community education areas. So we got to partner with nonprofits and ISDs that had like career pathway programs. And I loved that job very much. But I got a little, I did it for 8 years, and if you all know anything about me, I don't like to do the same thing over and over again. Like, I really thrive in places where I get to be creative and solve complex problems, and every day looks a little bit different. So at a certain point, I said, I really want to move off the platform of higher education and think about, like, what I want to do. And I've always been service-oriented. It's just sort of the way I was raised, to always give back, and moved to the nonprofit sector. And when I went to the nonprofit sector, I went into training and development with a background in education. It made sense. And worked with at-risk youth, worked with queer youth, worked in women's health, and eventually found my way here on an HR platform, sort of in a non-traditional path. Because most people in HR start out with like payroll, benefits, recruiting, and I sort of went sideways and did more conceptual strategic leadership work first that then brought me to the HR platform. So it was definitely a non-traditional path, but one that got me here, and I'm really excited about the work I do. I think HR comes across as being very rule-oriented and being like the hall monitor of the organization, but modern HR, if you read about it, is really about strategic resources and truly understanding your workforce to keep them highly engaged so that people really are making a place to live in their purpose and to feel good about what they're doing at work, where it's not just a job, it becomes, talk about pause and purpose, it becomes your purpose, right?
It's empowerment, isn't it?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
empowerment. I think when someone feels congruent with their talents and their strengths and they get to sit and exercise and practice that every day, you're just a more well-rounded, happier human being. So, we thrive, we strive to do that. I don't know how much we thrive at it, but it's something that, it brings me a lot of joy, because it's kind of like being a teacher, where you get to grow talent and help talent and produce that awareness and the tools and resources to help them get there. So I'm a nerd. I just love helping people in that sense.
That's awesome.
Great.
Well, and speaking of that, just that the ability to not just be all about the disciplinarian, or helping people understand their passion and realize that, especially in the animal welfare world, but I know also in nonprofits in general. I know there are challenges and opportunities in this space when you're talking about building and supporting a team. So if you could, can you kind of talk us through what those unique challenges and opportunities might be that you see as you're not only working to build and support a team, but also encouraging others to build and support their teams here at the SPCA of Texas?
Ooh, that's a good question. Because we're not a family at work. This is something that on the leadership table, we talk about it, because you can't be family at work. You can feel like family, you can feel really close, but we're really a team more than we are this family system, because family systems have a different background and different roots. But what happens in the workplace is you get so close to one another that it can feel that way.
Sure.
And so understanding what those team dynamics are and how healthy teams work together, the thing that I think you have to take a deep breath into and recognize and be really transparent about is that there's going to be conflict. There's going to be growing pains. There's going to be adjustments. There's going to be celebrations, there's going to be losses, there's going to be complex issues that you have to go through. So when it comes to building teams and making teams thrive, I think the most important thing you could do is build rapport, you could build trust, because when you have trust, you could get through anything, but you also have to be aware that some days are going to be hard, right? And you have to be aware that sometimes we're not going to hit our marks, or we might have to readjust our strategy and pivot. And if people feel safe If they feel safe, they're going to be more willing to go through that journey with you, and they're going to take more risks with you, and they're going to tell you when they're scared or if they feel vulnerable. But they're also going to take that feedback if you've got to give them some constructive criticism around all of that. And so I think being a team member is probably the most important thing we do when we show up to work, and thinking about how you're contributing to the team, but also like how you're providing support for the other people that sit around that same circle with you.
Well, I can vouch for that because, I mean, there's been several times I've come to you with something that was on my mind or something I wanted to talk about, and you were more like it was almost seemed like I was going to a favorite coach.
Aw.
You know what I mean? Because you just kind of coached me up, and I'm
love
like,
it.
okay, all right, I feel good about this
Yeah,
now.
go get it. Go do it.
Totally. So yeah. So I
Coach will
identify
also
with
give you
that,
corrective.
You know? Yeah.
Yes.
Like,
totally.
hey, I like what you just did there. But I wonder how it would have felt if, when this team member came to you, if you posed it this way or that
Totally,
way.
yeah.
So think about tone, think about framing, think about a disclaimer to get to a certain point so that someone can have those hard conversations with you.
Absolutely.
So I like that. Thank you.
Yeah.
I love coaching.
Sure. Yeah, that's how I felt. I don't know, KJ. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking like working in HR, there's always going to be a hard conversation that you have to have. So it's like,
Right.
what do you look to any people or mentors to, as far as like how you should go about doing something or what you should say?
I mean, the school of hard knocks, which is life, I think teaches you that sometimes, but you have to be really aware of getting better at it all the time. And I think the best way to be better is to put yourself in a circle of people that aren't afraid to hold up a mirror sometimes and reflect back to you all the, the fine lines and wrinkles of your character, because sometimes we have those. And sometimes in order to be better, you have to acknowledge it, and you have to diagnose it, and you have to change your behavior, right? And so having people around you that can do that you trust, is going to be vital. I was an athlete growing up, and so being coached was something I really, really like. I don't like being parented, but I like being coached. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Totally.
For sure.
Because
Yep.
parenting means you did something wrong or right, and you're going to get punished. Coaching is like, hey, come here real quick. I like the way your stance was, but if you just did this or that, then the ball's going to, well, I don't need to go into it. But with the coaching piece or the mentoring piece, I do think it has to be a consensual relationship where those things are outlined, because you can hang out with someone all day, but if you're not intentional about putting forth the goal or the objective of growth, of self-awareness, of learning, then it might not happen, right? And so you have to really be sure to distill that in those conversations. And some of the mentors that I've worked with have been life-changing. Like I said, I was a very rebellious teenager. I got into a little bit more trouble as a teenager than I did as a kid, so I'm glad you said, how were you as a kid and not a teenager? And it took me a long time to trust authority. But the first person who broke me, I was kind of like this feral wild cat that was really anti-systematic. And I remember being in community college for the first time after I had dropped out for a year and a half, and I just couldn't get through school. And one of my professors asked me to come by his office, and I was terrified. I was like, what does he want? And then when I finally got there, and I was like anxious, like I think my neck was all splotchy and red, and I was like, why is he paying attention to me? Because I usually got in trouble in school. And he said, you're a really good writer. Wow. I was like, that's it? It's like, what do you mean? Where's the catch? But he did say, I think your writing could go to a different level if you actually had a few drafts and you weren't turning in I can tell this is your first draft and it's your final paper. So he talked to me about discipline, but because he approached me in a way that was positive first and then back-ended like how to get there and be better, I began to shift. And then I found another mentor at the college campus who was this very strong woman, and ironically, she did have a PhD in psychology and counseling, so maybe it was free therapy for someone who might have needed it at that point. But it helped me build trust and learn how to ask for help. I did not know how to ask for help. I still struggle with that sometimes. But mentors like that I think, have modeled to me, and they always told me, because I said, y'all changed my life, y'all changed my life. I don't think I could have gotten through college without some positive influences around me. And they said, your only job is to keep it going. So if you are being mentored, think about how you pay that forward by doing it for the next generation. And it's something I took very seriously, and it's something I do. I do it professionally. I mentor people when, I said this to a coworker yesterday. I said, I'm gonna mentor you for a moment. I'm gonna take off boss hat. I'm gonna give you a mentor talk, because there's two different ways to do that, right? But I also do it with kids. I've been a flag football team manager. I've coached baseball. I've coached basketball, and I pay attention to my son's friend circles. And some of them will text me sometimes with life advice, and it's something I just get a lot of joy out of. I think people are fascinating.
Well,
so any way you can mentor is fun.
You have a way of making people feel comfortable. And I think, when they especially come to you at a low point or a low time, you make them kind of feel better about it initially right off the bat. And then the problem's not that bad because you've already made them feel better. So,
and I was wondering, like, if you were pulling coaching and mentoring from the Little League thing. Is it Little League or?
It was. Now it's they're about to be in high school. I don't know what's happening, but yeah, I coached
the
from
team building skills and stuff like that. Is that you're using those from that, or what came first?
Yeah,
did you coach first?
My first job when I was like 15 was a softball umpire, because I played softball and basketball growing up. And I did assistant coach then. But I also have a mom who was always involved. So it was modeled to me. Like, she was very involved with our activities when we were younger. And so I do think I coached first, definitely. So I do pull from that. But I also think, I was talking about this the other day, there's not a right way to be a leader. Like, everyone's going to have a different way that they lead. The point of being a good leader is being authentic and like trusting yourself to be who you are. There's not some magical quote or theory or framework you're going to pull out of a book or off the internet or ChatGPT to find the right way to lead. Those tools help, but the most important thing you can do is learn how to live in your own skin, be humble, be kind, be self-aware, and to probe and ask questions and talk back to life, and to provide a space where people feel comfortable doing the same. I think being a good leader is really knowing who you are, and being willing to show up and be vulnerable with others. Because if you can't do that, people don't buy what you're selling.
That's so true.
If you're selling,
That's so
not
true.
that you sell.
No.
Right.
But if you're trying to get people to get to a certain point.
Yeah.
I did hear a quote. It's my favorite quote. I know I've told Mara this before, but if you're a leader and you're going on a walk, if you're a leader and you're going on a walk and you're doing it alone. Wait, I just screwed that up.
I don't remember how it started.
Hold on. If you're a leader and people are going with you, but you find yourself alone, you're just going on a walk. You're not leading people. Did I say that right?
Yeah,
I kind of
sounds right.
screwed it up.
No.
but-
No.
I get
Anyways,
the point.
yeah, it's like if you're supposed to
true.
lead a team and you're doing it alone and no one's coming with you.
Yeah, you're not
just,
leading.
You ain't leading. You're just
No.
going on a walk,
Yeah,
maybe.
no,
So,
that's really, really well put.
Yeah.
And definitely some of the best advice I've ever gotten in my past too is that exact advice.
Yeah.
Like, don't try to be anybody else
Yeah.
in a world that expects you to be like everybody else. Which can also be really helpful when you work in a very emotionally charged environment, like especially in animal welfare. I know there's so many other verticals, markets where people have this, your heart gets broken maybe every day, a little bit, but then it also, your heart can shine here every day. So we see a lot of beautiful things, a lot of tough things. Can you tell us a little bit about how you foster a culture of compassion and resilience through the challenges that we see just in animal hardship and in people who are out there that we want to help animals and people? Tell us a little bit about that.
I am so excited about this question because it's literally the space I'm sitting in, not only personally, but also professionally, which is this topic. Like, the new topic now is self-compassion. We've heard a lot about, let me take a quick drink.
Mm-hmm.
The topic we talk a lot about is self-compassion in the sense that, sorry, allergies, I'm gonna do that one more
That's
time.
good.
right,
Take your
you're
time,
good.
of course. That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, the oat pollen is not quite gone yet.
I know, right? Okay. And 3, 2, 1. But the topic we talk a lot about is the new thing we're talking about in terms of employee wellness and well-being. Like, you've heard work-life balance, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think you can balance work and life. I think it's impossible. I think that's a myth. I think if you look at sort of the modern psychology of the workforce, they'll tell you that that's just not possible, because some days life is going to outweigh work, and sometimes work is going to outweigh life. And so it's more about integration, and it's more about how am I handling and treating myself so that I am prepared every day to show up to do the work. So you talked about resilience too. I think sometimes when you work on a nonprofit platform, and one where you do experience trauma, we do experience trauma in the workplace here. I will say, in the seat I sit, I experience more secondary trauma, because the difference is trauma is the person on the front lines that might have the dog with a gunshot wound that's trying to save a life, right? Or that's walking into the hoarder's house to rescue animals who are in pain and suffering. Where I sit, it's secondary, because once they get back from the field, I'm there to then provide the resources for them. And what happens when you work on a platform where trauma can occur, whether it's primary or secondary, is that it can wear us out, it can burn us out, it can hurt our hearts, it can wilt our energy level. The point that we're trying to do now, or the strategy we're trying to employ now, is to provide employees and the humans who work here to go home and to take care of themselves, so that when the compassion's there, they know how to light themselves back up to walk in ready to go. The hard part is we have to have the right coping mechanisms, and we have to have the right formula for each of us, right? Because all of us have different ones. So it's also hard because you have to make space to generate that self-awareness and to generate that understanding of, maybe I shouldn't eat these things and treat my body this way, or maybe I should get more sleep, or maybe I should drop this vice that might not be serving me XYZ. But, that's on the human being to do. But I think acknowledging and giving validity to the fact that the work we do is hard and complex and traumatic is the most important part. And so it's hard to talk about, like, how do you build a culture of resilience and compassion, because I think that starts with each of us. But that's some of the training we're bringing into the organization, and it's a philosophy that we're bringing into the organization, because we used to just say, oh, there's burnout and fatigue, that's just part of the work. Well, what if there's resilience and grit? Like, we all get tired and we all get burned out, but it's more about how you're bouncing back and how you create a way for yourself to get recharged and re-energized, knowing that the work is always going to be this way, because it's the hardest platform I've ever worked on. I will tell you all that. Animal welfare is very hard.
Well, and you probably, were talking about trauma. You experience it, like you said, you're not frontline. Sometimes it's secondary trauma, but I bet you get a lot of frontline too, because these employees have experienced some sort of trauma with a supervisor or another employee or something like that. So it's probably both. I bet you get a little bit of both of those.
We do, but I will say I'm prepared for it. And I still will say I think people in other roles experience way more than I do. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
Well, I think that, like I said, I think all your life experiences and the way your attitude is sets you up perfectly for that, because you're just kind of open and an open book every time. Like I said, my experience has been great. I just walk in and you just immediately know exactly where I'm at and say the right thing, and I'm like, okay, well, there you go. Makes me feel better. But
I do not always say the right thing. No one's ever said that to me in my life.
To me, it is. I mean, maybe I'm having to hit you on the right day, but it's always been a positive experience for me and the people that I know. But you've worked. KJ talked about a little bit your experience, and we've talked about some of the different things that you've done professionally. Is there a difference between folks that work in a nonprofit as opposed to those who work in a for-profit? And from an HR perspective, is there? I mean, obviously there's, the people are there for different reasons, but do you see any clear delineations between those folks and folks that are more, that work in a nonprofit or are more?
I think that's a hard question to ask and answer, because it's hard to tell a small business owner who, I'm thinking about my son's father who owns a restaurant. That's a passion project, and it's corporate because it's for profit, and he truly believes he's changing the world with his food and his food experience, which he does. He makes, Bishop Art's a better place.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's fair to tell someone in corporate that their work's not as important or valid, because they're taking care. You do that to take care of your family and to give your family choices to do stuff.
Definitely.
But I will say this. I do think people who choose to work in nonprofit might have a more values-driven definition of success than a more external, what's the word I'm looking for?
Material?
Extrinsic. Yes, material. That's exactly it. A material-driven definition of success.
And both are great.
Both are great.
It just
you
depends
need both.
on the person.
Yeah,
Sure.
it does. And I think you also have to think about context of someone's life. truth be told, you asked me how I got onto this platform. I'm a single mom. And so being a professor meant I was going to hit a salary cap, and I had to make a different career choice because I was becoming head of household with a sole financial revenue stream versus a double one. So part of my personal decision to get into HR work was, I can rise to a higher rank if I take on this job, knowing I could still get some of those same feelings that I get in the classroom. But if money weren't a thing, I would teach my whole life. Like, I would be a professor and a coach. Like, Don Lindsley told me the other day, you should be a basketball coach, Judith. And I was like, Don, that won't pay my bills, bro.
That was a great compliment.
It was a great compliment. I was like, I would love to do that, but I can't live off that, and provide the lifestyle. So sometimes people have to make choices for their families or for other reasons, knowing that, you have a means to an end. Sure. But I will say, I think people in .org spaces might have a different level of conscientiousness about the footprint they're leaving on the world, or in society, or within their experience. But I don't think one is better than the other.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, sure, you have, but on either side, you have mixes of those on either side. That's interesting. Well, that's I have to agree with you. I think, I've kind of been in both places before, and I've seen that same kind of mix, and it's just interesting to see, you have some people, the passion is always the common denominator. So, and that's a good thing because you're very passionate, I think, and that spreads too. That's
It's funny though, like no one's ever wanted to hire me corporate. Like they must smell my nonprofit, like social do-gooder. Like we've all applied for a million jobs, right? Like I just don't get picked up in corporate environments. I don't know why. It's probably because it's all .org.edu work, but I don't know. Like it's just interesting. I've just never really. I had one internship that was corporate, and I truly didn't fit in. Like I was in the office space, it just felt different. It just wasn't my vibe. So
right. Yeah.
Well, I have a question for you. In our increasingly technological world, where we have like AI, we have like well, that's the same thing, ChatGPT and AI, but we have just things coming one after another. Do those technological advancements, do they make it easier for you to do your job? Do they make it harder?
100% easier. Mara and I, she knows this, she had to really beat me over the head with the concept of using those tools. Because remember, what's the first compliment I got? You're a good writer. So I was like, no, you're lazy if you use that tool. Like, and I didn't tell people that, but I did have a certain judgment in my brain about people who were using AI to like write the newsletter or write a response to an email. And I remember I was doing a really big complex project last year, and I could not figure out how to frame the proposal. Like it was something I'd never written before. It was an assignment that was really high level, and I didn't know exactly what that outline or that framework should look like. And for the first time in my life, it was like last July, I opened up ChatGPT and Claude.ai, and I was like, hey Claude, can you help me out? And I like drop in the needs was, and within 15 seconds, I got my outline.
It's amazing.
And I ran into Mara's office. I was like, I was so wrong. What was I thinking? And I realized at that point, like I was taking a skill that I had and I was trying to hoard it from the rest of the world. And I had a flashback of like thinking, this is like when the calculator was discovered for math. Like you would never not give a kid who struggles with numbers, say, you can't have this calculator.
Totally.
You need to suffer. I also believe this is true. I've heard a couple of experts say this, that AI is bigger than the internet. Like when the internet first came out, like AI is just as revolutionary and might even be more so. So the next 5 years is going to be intense and crazy, and if you don't get on the bus, you're going to be left back in the 1900s.
That's right. Yeah.
And I ain't trying to be left off any buses for advancement. But you do have to make peace with this idea that you have to embrace being ignorant on something, and it's scary to have to learn something new.
Well, and learning how to use it appropriately.
Yes.
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
don't just be like, hey, write all my stuff for me.
Yeah, right. Seriously.
Like,
Right.
hey, here's some cool stuff I wrote. Can you do this with it? Or show me, or like you said, like a framework. Like, what's another way to think about this that I'm not seeing? And it'll go out and research for. It blows my mind every day.
Yeah,
does.
Mara
It's so
taught me to
wonderful.
frame everything I'm writing like, speaking as a chief human resource
Yes.
officer, help me create. And so you have to really sculpt. And for me, I think it creates better connections. It has alleviated some of the busy work of writing that you have to do sometimes.
Yeah.
And so I've 100% embraced it. And
Awesome.
I think you can't reverse a revolution. And I think it's going to be a part of the school system, and we all just need to make peace with it.
Hot tip for now, especially with ChatGPT, If your text has a bunch of M dashes in it, like the longer dashes, that's a dead giveaway. You're using ChatGPT. So
I
take
like
them
that
out.
naturally.
If you do, then that's great, and that's been your
Okay.
style. But it will automatically default to that. Also, it inserts like half spaces and other weird little characters that are invisible. So it's best to strip that code, or else you'll end up like one time. I think I sent something. It was like, "There's a weird tag at the end of that URL. What's that about?" So you got to be careful too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There are a lot of different. Yeah.
Just can't take it at face value.
Yeah, no, you have to. It is a tool. You
have to
can't
scrub
just.
it.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to. You have to work with it. You can't just. It's not like you're going to say, you know what, I'm going to go use this claw to go pick up this thing, and then what you're really doing is like throwing a tennis ball at something.
Again, it goes back to authenticity. Like you
Yeah.
could use a tool, but then go back and scrub it down so it looks like you and feels like you. and
Yeah,
stuff.
For sure.
Don't lose your tone of voice.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Sound like a robot.
What, Judith? Just kind of wrapping up here. What would be your advice for employees? Just your average employee that's just making it, coming into work and say maybe has those feelings of kind of burnout, or what? How would you tell someone to just keep going forward and everything's going to be okay? Because you do have that positive vibe about you. How do you spread that to other people who may not be experiencing that and go through some ruts?
I think it's really important with people, specifically young. We have a young workforce that comes in with entry-level work sometimes, and it doesn't matter your age. I think you can always learn and grow.
Yeah.
But I think it's really important to always think about what's my next step. I did this a lot when my first job at a college was as a writing tutor making like $11 an hour, and my last job was as an executive dean. So like I literally climbed that ladder and had to figure it out. One piece of advice I got, back to the mentoring thing, was if you want someone's job, go look at the job description, and I want you to think about, when you look at the job description, what's required and what's recommended, so that I know, it's like, I want that, but I'm here now. So you go find out what's required, and then you build a pathway or a road. You have to like make your own road to get there, right? And I am someone who had to create those opportunities for myself. Yeah. And you have to be able to also not be afraid to ask for help or ask for guidance. So if you want to be somewhere, my first inclination then was like, must be nice that they're a VP of people and culture. They probably had rich parents, and they probably had a connection, like, or nepotism. Like, I would come up with all these things in my head about how that person got there so easily. When if you just stop and you don't resent their success and you say, I'm feeling jealous right now because I admire the seat they're sitting in.
Absolutely.
I want to sit in that seat. How do I get there? So it's like, don't demonize or assume the other person had it easier than you. Sit back and say, I really admire them. Like, admiration and jealousy are very different feelings, but they get convoluted or there's some tangled, it can get tangled up sometimes, right? Not an entanglement, but they get tangled up sometimes. And so stop and say, whoa, that's not the energy I want to approach this with. I just really like where they're at. How did they get there? Set up a meeting with someone, go ask them questions like, what did you major in? How did you get there? Was this a formal education plan? Did you learn on the job? And see how they did it, and then you can get there. I also think it's important to do your research and to know what things pay, right?
Yeah.
So get on websites like Glassdoor, Indeed, Idealist, and go look at your dream job. Like, go look it up, see what the salary range is, see what those skill sets are. So that way when you walk in, you're informed and you know how to negotiate. And I will say this too, for every person in the organization, if you get a promotion or an opportunity, if you have to write it on a piece of paper and force yourself to read it, always negotiate for your pay, for your value, for your worth. The worst they're going to say is no. It doesn't make you look problematic. It makes you look strategic and like you believe in yourself, and don't be afraid to go for that. That's probably the two pieces of advice I give people in the workworkforce quite a bit.
Yeah,
That's
I agree
great
with that.
advice.
You got to be hungry.
I feel like I've heard you say that a lot of times.
That's
like,
great.
This is your opportunity. I won't tell people what to say, but I was so afraid to ask or negotiate for money. And my older sister, who is the North Star, she was like, Judith, just write it on a piece of paper. And when they ask you, does this work? You're going to pick up the piece of paper and you're going to read it to them with your voice shaking. And let me tell you, my voice was shaking. But I got more money.
I had a very similar experience to that. Past life of mine working in television, and with this really senior reporter I worked with had a similar kind of experience in a similar way he did it. He he was at a smaller station, went to a bigger station, had more clout, kind of came back to a smaller station, and they offered him something, and he wrote down exactly what you said. He wrote down what he wanted, and he just slid it across to him.
Oh, he didn't even say it.
Didn't even say anything, just slid it across.
That's
And they looked at it.
Yeah,
like,
seriously.
That's the word I was going to use. Because he didn't say a word after. They looked at it, and they start talking, and he just sat there.
Oh my.
And they talked and talked and talked, and he just sat there and listened to him talk. He said, I didn't say a word. I sat there, I didn't say a word. And they gave it to him. So, I mean, I think that goes to, I think what you're saying, I don't know that I would take that approach exactly, but that goes to what you're saying about being confident. You know what your skill set is. Mm-hmm. You know, you go in, even if you're a little bit nervous, you know that you're there for a reason. They want you there. They've invited you there. Just, you know, be confident without being cocky.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I got the chills about 4 months ago at work. When I get chills, it's like validation you're in the right place.
Yeah.
There was someone in the organization who was being promoted, and I was not part of any of the negotiations, wasn't part of the offer or anything like that. And down the hall, the door was shut to the person who got the offer, and the other person who shares an office with this person came to me like 48 hours later and told me this whole story. And she goes, when so-and-so got the promotion, I said, you have to do what Judith said. You have to counter. Judith says to counter. This is your moment. The other person's like, I don't want to. I'm too scared. And guess what? She goes, you use ChatGPT. You use ChatGPT to write the counter, and you send it in email so you don't have to use your voice to ask with your voice shaking. And let me tell you, they did it. And she got more money.
Wow.
She got more money.
Good for her.
Yeah. So like it was
Don't be
cool.
afraid.
And, like, I didn't know any of that happened until after the fact, but it was like, oh my God, they're listening. Like they're listening. And it makes me proud of the women we work with and the people of color we work with, because typically those two groups won't advocate for themselves as much because it's been a white man's world.
Yeah.
And we're just lucky to get what we get, but the culture's shifting, and it's like, no, lean back. Like, why not you? Why can't it be you?
Yeah. Coach. I'm sorry. That's your new nickname.
Judith.
Right? Coach. That's Coach. I got a problem. Well, guys, any other questions that we haven't asked? I mean, it's just so nice to get a time to sit down with you and have some time to breathe and talk to you, because we're all rushing and going and seeing each other in the hallway.
Like
and,
ping pong balls.
Totally. It's nice to just breathe and talk to you.
Yeah.
I do have something actually.
Yeah.
You work in HR. You're always dealing with people, and people aren't always friendly. They aren't always nice. How do you stay motivated in those times? Like, what do you pull on?
You know, people aren't nice all the time, but I'm going to tell you a true belief I have deep in my soul. If you're nice all the time, I don't like you.
Something wrong with you.
I don't. Like, I don't
Something
trust
wrong with
people
you.
who are always happy. And I don't trust people who are always nice, because that probably means on some level you're being inauthentic, or you're people pleasing, or you're performing. And so I love it when someone's like, you've got a smiley human, because there are certain people that are smilier than others, and one day their smile's not as wide. Like, you all right? Oh man, I'm up against something right now. That's vulnerability. That's real, right?
Yeah.
And so, but on the flip side, someone who's always grouchy, that can feel toxic. It can feel heavy. It can feel weighted. And so I truly believe I've learned to allow people to feel things and be who they are without internalizing it and taking it personal. But I do think we all have a responsibility to treat each other with respect and regard.
Absolutely.
And so you can't walk around like that. So I've had to call people out on that. The way I stay motivated is I'm just an HR person in the organization. Like, I am not responsible for everyone's experience. I try to facilitate the best I can, but I also know that the culture belongs to all of us, and we all co-create it every single day. And so I think it's the responsibility of everyone around us on the team to also call that behavior out or be aware of it. But I try to stay non-judgmental, non-biased. I'm not perfect, but I just try to receive people and meet them exactly where they're at.
And you seem like you have a philosophy of it starts with you type thing.
Yes, like be the change, be responsible for what you're bringing into the room. But that's the hardest part.
Oh, boy.
It's the hardest part, because it's like you can smell everyone else's funk, but you can't smell your own.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's so true. It's so true. My
You're
dad
like,
was.
"Who stinks?" It's like,
must
"You,
be
bro."
smelling your upper lip. Yeah.
Oh my God,
That's what my dad
It's
used
your
to
upper
tell me.
lip.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. That's so funny.
It's you, bro.
Yeah. But you do. You become like buffered to your own funkiness sometimes. And I think it's the self-awareness piece that's really important.
Yeah.
It's hard though. It's hard.
And being able to hear it when someone's says, "Look, I got to lay some on you."
Yeah.
That's true.
Like,
Yeah.
Okay, let's.
You take a deep breath and listen, because the natural response to that, and I've been in these moments, I've been called out for things at work. Your natural instinct is to be defensive, but the
Yes.
minute your defense rises, you're not listening.
Yes. True.
Yeah. Well, and I get the feeling too,
Yeah.
when people come to you with stuff, it's for you, it's almost an honor. Like, well, thank you for coming to me about that. You know, I've kind of picked that up from you too, which I think is very valuable too.
Yeah, but I've also had to learn how to empower people where they keep coming to me, and I'm like, listen, at
Yeah.
this point, I'm going to not say anything. I want you to ask yourself the same question, turn around and try to solve it yourself and come back. Because then you're not coaching, you're enabling,
Yeah,
right? So
right.
at a certain point, like, it's like, your management legs are built. They're strong. You had leg day. go flex those management legs, right? Like, you got this.
I love
but if
that.
it's someone's
Yeah.
first year on the job and as a first-time manager, we are going to give them more time and attention.
Yeah.
But it's about confidence and empowerment too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how to thank you for taking time again for being with us today. It's just so nice to sit and talk with, for professionals and hear from you about, specifics on what you do every day and kind of the behind the scenes and how you work it with employees. It's so refreshing and so interesting to me, these conversations. And we just want to thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
Thanks, Judith.
I love y'all's
Podcast.
team. I love the work you all do, and the spirit and the branding and the story you all tell about the organization is beautiful, and keep up that work.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it. We're working towards not perfection, but just getting it to where we're all
Keeping
comfortable.
on, going up and around and over the things, and
onward.
we're good. Yeah, all of that. But it's the rising tide lifts all ships. So it's not one,
I
it's
love that.
all.
Absolutely, boss. You want to tell us some more about Boss? What's coming up in the next couple of months with us?
Yes.
Some events and
I
things?
would love to. Yes,
Please
yes.
do.
So I know this is more or less, we want it to be evergreen content. And so I won't get necessarily as specific, but I do want to mention a couple of things. You can always go to spca.org/calendar and see our upcoming events. You can go to spca.org. Somebody grabbed that back in 1994, that URL. And you can learn all about what we do, from, coming to adopt, being a foster, becoming a volunteer, learning about the work we do in the community, how we can help keep pets in their homes, how our Animal Cruelty Investigations Unit helps animals out there and people, and how we have such a compassionate approach for all of these things. There are also some events that happen on a more or less regular basis. We have one event that usually happens the third Sunday of every month, but it does change from time to time. So catch that website first before you come. The Drive-Through Pet Pantry. It is a fabulous resource. People can drive through, pick up food for their pets. We know times are hard out there, and but look at the website first, because we do ask that you put your name down on a list, just so that we have enough food that day for you, so we can prep. So that usually happens starting at 9 a.m. around the third Sunday of every month. We are also at North Park Center by Dillard's in Dallas, usually. At least once a month, and sometimes twice, but usually the second Saturday. But again, hit that calendar. You can see all the things coming up. I do want to promote a few of our big events during the year. We have Paws Cause on May 22nd. We have Furball on September 19th. These are big fundraisers, so much fun, different degrees of fancy. And it's all to support the wonderful cause of everything that everybody here, staff and volunteers, do every day for people and pets, animals and people, and the community. So check out all that, and we just thank you again for joining us and for being a part of the whole wide SPCA of Texas family.
Absolutely, Maura. Thank you for running that down for us, and thanks everybody for being on the show today. We sure had a good time. We'll do it again sometime.
Yes.
So everybody, for Maura, Judith, KJ, and Paul Heiss. So thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time here on Paws and Purpose, the SPCA podcast, Texas podcast. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Bye.
And that wraps up today's episode. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and took away something valuable. If you loved what you heard, don't forget to subscribe, leave us a review, and share this episode with a friend. It really helps us keep the conversation going. Got thoughts, questions, or ideas for future episodes? We'd love to hear from you. Connect with us on social media. We're on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook.